The former great Duke postman. I don't even know if he was a post-up player. What was your official position there, Jay, at Duke?
I was a center, Dan. So I was put in the post. I wouldn't call it a post-up player because the ball never came in there. It was never thrown into the post as an intentional thing. And in fact, when Coach K recruited me, a lot of people negatively recruited against Duke by saying, if you go to Duke, he's going to make you play center for 4 years. And I said, no, come on, that never happened. And I played center for 4 years.
Did you think about going to UCLA?
They didn't really recruit me that much.
Oh, okay.
They UCLA was recruiting a guy that lived near me that I played against named Kerry Bogney, who wound up going to Kansas. And he decommitted from UCLA kind of at the last minute, and then they gave a little bit of effort my way, but it was very, very little and very, very disappointing for a guy who grew up in LA not to be coveted by the Bruins. You know that feeling for most of the places you wanted to go.
That's true. All of the places that I wanted to go. Now, were you officially assigned to Purvis Ellison in the national title game?
Yes, but he scored most of his points against other defenders. I was officially the guy that was guarding Purvis Ellison, and I held him to 25 points when against a lesser defender he would have gotten 50.
So he scored all those points after he blew by you. Then he scored on other people, is what you're saying.
No, I would have to, as a secondary defender, as a help defender, I would have to pick up and make up for the mistakes of others, and then they would pass, and our rotations were slow to get over to Ellison. So that was usually what it was. I was the guy that was saving the defense, and then somebody screwed up, and Ellison scored.
Nice. He's Jay Bilas of the Mothership. The NCAA took 10 years to investigate Syracuse. Let me start there, Jay. The fact that it took 10 years to do this, why?
Well, I mean, surprise, surprise that the NCAA investigations don't do things the way you would want them to do it. It's an imperfect system is kind, so that's been a long-standing problem. And Dan, I always am called kind of the NCAA critic. Yep. I believe in rules. I think we should have rules, and rules should be enforced, and they should be enforced evenly and fairly across the board. The problem that I have is I don't think the rules are fair. I don't think they're evenly applied, and I do not think that the punishments that are handed down are trustworthy, and they're certainly not consistent. And that's sort of the problem here is that you've got some violations. Like people say, hey, admitted to it. Syracuse admitted to it. They did. They admitted to violations, but they didn't admit to the conclusions that were reached by the Committee on Infractions. And they certainly didn't agree with the punishments. And I think reasonable people can agree that, look, we should all be responsible for our actions and what's within our sphere of influence, and what's within our purview reasonably. But to place blame for everything that anyone does with regard to one's program is a little bit much. And and what problems does that really solve that we're facing? Of the problems that are facing college athletics, laying it all at the feet of a coach and absolving everyone else basically of responsibility above that coach, does that really get us where we want to go as a policy matter? And I don't think that does.
How close do you think Syracuse came to firing Jim Boeheim?
Not at all. I don't think that's even a consideration. Boeheim has the support of his president, of the chancellor, of the athletic director. I don't think it's even a consideration. I think from the president's statement and the letter that he wrote, it's pretty clear that they are supporting him in his appeal of this, that they acknowledge that there were violations there. But it's sort of the idea, Dan, that if we all pay taxes, and we all think paying taxes is an important function, and we all acknowledge that we need to do that. So if now, you have a huge crew that does your taxes. I have one person. But when we sign our tax forms, we're agreeing that we're responsible for that. So if there's a mistake in there, we pay the penalty and pay the interest and all that stuff. And so we would acknowledge, hey, there's a violation there, and we're responsible for it because we're the signatory of that. Now, if they come and say, all right, you're responsible for that, but you're also going to go to jail for 20 years, we go, whoa, wait a minute. We acknowledge that we're responsible, but that's over the top. that's kind of what we're talking about here, and I think the university looks at it that way as well. I don't think Jim Boeheim's going anywhere.
Talking to Jay Bilas of ESPN, joining us, Dan Patrick Show. But trying to figure out, when they say lack of institutional control, or what did Jim Boeheim know? And he had underlings. He had people who were above him. I mean, there are a lot of people involved, had their hands in this. So how do you assess blame or punishment? Boeheim losing those victories? I know it's the school losing victories, but it's really Boeheim losing the victories. Trying to sort this out and say, I'm going to blame you, and I'm going to sort of blame you. And how do you think they divvied this up where Boeheim's suspended for 9 games? He loses these wins. I mean, kind of strange in how you kind of sort out punishment.
But it's the perfect system of non-accountability for sort of the NCAA structure, that they can lay it all at the feet of a coach. And that's really what the NCAA does. They publicly shame individuals, and then everybody moves on, and nothing really changes. Because I think you hit the nail on the head on the punishment and the violations, that we have this sort of thing hanging over this of NCAA violation, lack of institutional control, failure to promote an atmosphere of compliance, and failure to monitor. But I don't think many people, including maybe even you and me, could articulate exactly what happened here. So most folks have no idea what these violations are about. They have no idea. And so it's not that this is a deterrent for anybody doing anything in the future, because nobody really knows what happened. And I'm not sure that even the conclusions and the judgment that was handed down by the NCAA makes it clear. It doesn't. I don't think it makes it clear at all to anyone. So it's a bad system. And let me bring this up. And people are going to take this the wrong way, but I don't care. If you're going to call Jim Boeheim a cheater over this and say cheater, 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 violations you should have known, then don't we have to be willing to call John Wooden a cheater because of what went on in his program with Sam Gilbert and all that? Do we have to if we're going to call one a cheater because of what happened at a YMCA, do we have to call the systematic paying of players at UCLA in the 60s and 70s by Sam Gilbert? Do we have to impute that to John Wooden under the same standard and say, cheater? I'm not willing to do that. I don't know if others are, but if you're going to do that with Boeheim and Pete Carroll and all that stuff, don't we have to be willing to do it with Wooden?
A couple other things. Tom Crean's future in Indiana.
I don't know. I think Tom's a really good coach, and I think he's done a good job there. But we all serve at the pleasure of our superiors, and if Fred Glass and the president there at Indiana want to make a change, I mean, there's nothing I can do about that. But I can tell you, I think Tom Crean is an excellent coach. If I were in charge there would be no change. He'd be in charge.
Best team you've seen aside from Kentucky this year?
Wisconsin. I'd put Duke there offensively. They're not as good, perhaps defensively, as they are in offense. But Wisconsin, and they're not completely healthy. They lost a point guard early in the year. They're like Ohio State now, playing with a backup quarterback or a third string quarterback. Bronson Koenig has come in there, and they haven't missed a beat. They've been excellent. And I think they'd give, of all the teams that I've seen, I think they'd give Kentucky the hardest time because of their ability to control the tempo, defensive rebound, and pull big guys away from the basket and operate. Their bigs can operate on the perimeter, which not a lot of teams can do for 40 minutes.
Can you compare Kentucky to any other team I guess in recent history, but how do you compare greatness in one decade to greatness in another decade?
Yeah, it's hard to do because you're probably in one measure counting pros. And I'd say Kentucky's the best team I've seen kind of in the one-and-done era since 2000, maybe the year 2000, 2001, because of their defense. Offensively, there have been better teams, but their offense is better than we give it credit for. I think the thing, Dan, that's really impressive about this team is, one, they are selfless. I mean, they play hard and they play for each other. But they're so good defensively, and they keep coming at you, and nothing phases them. That against Georgia at halftime, Brad Nessler and I were talking, watching them warm up, that they were smiling, and they were not flippant in any way. They were not disregarding their opponent, but they were not afraid, and they were not tight. Like they weren't going, oh, geez, we could lose. If we don't play well, we could lose. They were not worried. They were loose. And loose in a good way. And I was really impressed by that. I mean, really impressed.
How awkward was it to call the first Duke North Carolina game when Dickie V was going to call it and then found out he wasn't going to be calling that game. He had called it forever, and that you were put in as the analyst.
There was no awkwardness on my part. You're just doing a job that you've always done. And to me, every broadcast is about the game, not who's calling the game. I'm not naive enough to think that we really matter. But at the same time, I'm very respectful of a close friend in Dick Vitale and someone who has been such a major part of the game and the environment around the game for so many years, and respectful of his feelings. So it's but that was all around the game and off the air, not on. So once you got to the job, it was all about the game and putting your energies into the game rather than what was going on around it.
Just thinking one more thing before I let you go. If Kentucky doesn't run the table, it will be because
they don't play well and somebody else plays great, just like it was when UNLV got beat in '91 by Duke. I thought Duke played. I was a grad assistant on that staff, so of course I was a big factor in the win. But Duke played great. I don't think UNLV felt like they played their best. It was one of those deals, but that'll be what it is. I don't think if Kentucky plays its best, they do not lose.
Well, the only thing I thought is the defense rarely takes a night off. Offense can. It just happens that way. And the only thing I thought is, will their guards, will something happen offensively that allows somebody to stay in the game and, maybe win something late because of that?
Yeah, I think what it have to happen, Dan, is they have to all sync at the same time, and they haven't had that all year. Like, they've always got somebody that's got it, whether it's Aaron Harrison or Andrew Harrison or Devin Booker or Tyler Ulis or Karl Anthony Towns. There's always somebody that's playing well. You might have somebody that's not, but Calipari's got a lot of buttons he can push, and he's got a lot of troops that he can send into battle. And if one of them gets cut down, there's another one picking up the flag, running with it, and it's pretty impressive. Now they're unbeaten. They're not unbeatable. I do not think they are unbeatable, but it's going to take an extraordinary effort to beat them.
Great to talk to you, Jay. Have fun at the ACC tournament. We'll talk to you during March Madness.
I am so glad to get through an interview without you calling me the mean-spirited Jay Bilas. That was really impressive.
That was a long time ago, Jay.
Have we mellowed in our old age?
You have mellowed. You have.
And your hair looks spectacular, by the way.
Thank you. Well, doesn't any hair look spectacular to you, Jay?
It does. It does for me. I'm actually saving the hair that grows out of my ears. It's just for old time's sake.
I almost got through the interview without saying something mean-spirited.
That's okay. We can't change our stripes.
You're right.
We are who we are.
You're right. All right. I'm Dayton. You're Duke.
All right, brother.
Thank you, Jay.
Thank you.
All right. Jay Bilas.